he had managed to have the whole ball of Play-Doh. And he wasn't hoarding this stuff. He had just, by quirk of kids playing, he was in the corner with the Play-Doh all by himself. And he wasn't making anything. He wasn't baking anything. He was just squishing it, having a sensory experience. He even had kind of his belly on it a little bit. He was in his own world, letting his senses create a reality that way. He was just having his time. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna, what a good time for a little philosophy. Maybe I'll just go over there and drop one in there. And I walked over, and I didn't even acknowledge him. I sort of just went over and kind of sat down shoulder to shoulder, stared off in the distance, and I said, I wonder what play it is. He just kept squishing that Play-Doh. And I waited 12 seconds, 15 seconds, time to think. He kept on squishing, he didn't say anything. 30 seconds, a minute went by. I figured, all right, that's fine. This was not a question, right? This was just an I wonder statement. It was a loose part that he could pick up or not. And a couple minutes went by, and I figured, all right, big deal. Probably I sat there for 3 or 4 minutes. By 4 minutes, I'd forgotten about it too. And something was going on the corner of the classroom. I got up to walk away. As I walked away, he said, Teacher Tom, play is what I do when people stop telling me what to do. I get shivers when I say that. Think about that. He had taken, and thank God I gave him those 4 minutes. Yeah. He needed that time to actually think about it. And that's the power. That's where our power lies with our language. It's not on us to create their reality. It's on them to create reality. It's those informational statements that allow us to be powerful with young children. Making statements of fact. Giving them the loose parts of the world. Informing them of things. Instead of saying to children, I'd say around schedules, that's really a tough time with kids. We tend to boss them around. Instead of saying to a child, go put on your coat, which is a command, you can convert that into a statement of fact by just saying it's time to put on your coat. You put the child in a position where they're not reacting. Either or, obey or disobey. You're creating space for them to think for themselves. Instead of saying, don't stick your finger in that electrical outlet, you can say, if you do that, you might die. Which has the virtue of being true, and boy, what a thought-provoking idea that is. And we all know if you say to a child, you've got a wall over here, you say, don't climb on that wall and turn your back. Almost every kid's they're going to at least go to that wall. They might not climb on it, but they're going over to find out, because they don't hear the word don't. They just heard that. And by using informational statements, you create a space for children to think for themselves. I'll give you probably the time that we boss kids around the most is when it's tidy up time. Time to clean up, right? Put that away, hang that up. No, stop hiding back there, right? So at our school, what we try to do is we try to do cleanup time using only informational statements. So the way that works, so I start with my drum, the drum is the signal. It is a statement of fact. It's time to clean up. And then, I thought about this a lot. And please, interject if you think I'm wrong about this. But I can only think of 3 general categories of things that adults understand better than young children, as a rule. One of them is schedules. Second one is safety. I think we probably have a little better handle on that. And courtesy. Beyond that, I don't think we have an upper hand on them. Honestly. I might know more about, say, Elizabethan fiction than a young child, than a 5-year-old, but that 5-year-old knows a lot more about the Frozen movie than I do. So, the rest is kind of trivia where we're kind of equals. We might think Elizabethan novels are more important, but believe me, Frozen movie is way more important. So anyway, I beat my drum, so this is the signal. It's time to go. It's time to clean up. And usually, if your classroom's anything like mine, all of you probably have some kind of signal. What, about half the kids participate? Right, just on their own. They're ready to go. They start putting blocks on the shelf. They start hanging up the costumes. And then there's probably 25% of them who aren't opposed. They're not resistant necessarily, but they're in the middle of something. You know, they're working a puzzle. You don't want your puzzle. You've got to finish your puzzle. Or you're working on a piece of art. You've got to finish your piece of art. Or you're building a building, a tower, you know, to the ceiling. You still got to get a chance to try to build it to the ceiling. And if we create this, we'll give them the time, and I think that's what I try to do, is I give them the time, whether it's 5, 10, even 15 minutes to finish what they're doing. None of us like to be interrupted in the middle of what we're doing to move on to the next, even if we're ready to move on. So I think when you're creating your schedules, build in the time for that. Now I know what a lot of people do, and I used to do this too, is have the 5-minute warning. Some of you probably still do that. It's like 5 minutes till cleanup. I used to do that, then I started thinking, this doesn't seem to be working the way I think it does. So I tried an experiment one day. There was a shelf of toys over here that had not been touched the entire time we'd been playing. And I took a picture of it to prove it. That was a full shelf. And then I said, 5 minutes till cleanup. 5 minutes later, I went over to those shelves, and they were completely cleaned out. It's because, you know, when I say to you, if I said to you, well, we'll get about 10 minutes before we go, you know that's a signal to start packing away. But for a young child, they just hear, oh my God, I've only got 5 more minutes. I got a lot left to do. So I think it's counterproductive. So I just try to give them the 5 minutes after the signal, 5, 10 minutes after the signal instead of before the signal to do that. So then you've got about 75% of the kids, more or less, if you give them the time to get there on their own, just with the signal, just the indication it's time to tidy up, participate. Then there's that other 25%. Who aren't going to have anything to do with it. Right? They're hiding under the loft, they're giggling off in the corner. And that's when we start making our informational statements. We start saying things like, there's a block on the floor, and it belongs on the shelf. Always a child will go to that block. It might not be the kids hiding, but somebody's going to go, because what happens suddenly? Instead of saying, put that block on the shelf, you're saying, there's a block on the floor, it belongs on the shelf. That suddenly opens space for a child to think, it's cleanup time. There's a block on the floor, it belongs on the shelf. And a child will always make the decision to say, hey, I could be the one who puts it on that shelf. The costumes belong on the costume rack. Always, children will start putting the costumes on the costume rack. And you start telling the story of what you see happening. Much more powerful is you start naming names. Micah and Susan are putting the Duplos in the box. Well, then you've got all the kids walking along showing you the blocks. Like, I want to be part of the story too. Oh, James is doing it too. So, Philomena is doing it too. And you've got them putting the blocks in the box. You start telling the story because we all want to be part of the story of us. We all want to be part of the story. If you start, some people call this sportscasting. I call it narrating. Because I think sportscasting to me, and I've told Janet Lansbury is one of my friends, and she uses sportscasting. It's kind of a Magna Gerber thing. And to me, sportscasting is like, hey, you're going to go! It's too much energy. I like just sitting there, just telling the story. I see kids putting Duplos in the blocks. I see them putting things away. I see the children. And we start making these stories. And invariably what happens is the mistake we make as adults is we have this sense of justice. And we think they all have to clean up because they all help make the mess. So we start doing things like, Max is not cleaning up. Even though that's a statement of fact, well, what are they going to do? No, Max is not cleaning up. Teacher Tom's paying attention to Max. I'm going over there. And suddenly you'll have them all over there with Max. To me, I just ignore those kids. They're choosing to not be part of the story of us that day. That's their decision if they want. I mean, I guarantee right here, right now, if I said to you, okay, when we're done, I need everybody to help stack the chairs and put them away. And I would guess I bet 75% of you'd help out, and 25% of you'd have something better to do. And I wouldn't judge you for that, because maybe you did. I don't know how your bladder is. I don't know who you got at home waiting for you. Maybe you got better. You probably do have better things to do. But anyway, so the truth is, this was my very first year teaching. And I had just come out of Tom Drummond's class, and I had committed myself. I was not going to be bossing kids around. I was not going to be peppering them with questions anymore. And I was going to stick with these informational statements. I was going to do that. And I made the ultimate rookie mistake, probably worse than buying my daughter tickets to the pianist. Because you know those little counting bears? The multi-colors, there's like 500 in the box. And I put them all on a table for the 3 of them. Those kids came in, and little Charlie and Sam came in, a pair of twin brothers. They stood across the table, and did that twin thing with the big eye contact. And ha ha! He knocked the bears all over the floor. The kids are slipping on him and tripping on him and keeping them under furniture. They had to get off the floor. And so I said, and so all I had, I didn't have commands, I didn't have questions, all I had were informational statements. And all that came to me was, the bears are on the floor, and they belong on the table. And I did that same thing I said to you I do with the kids, so I'm waiting for them. I just looked at the bears. And Charlie and Sam just stood there looking at the bears with me. And I said, the bears are on the floor, and they belong on the table. And we all just stood there looking at those bears. But by now, 12, 15 seconds ago, I had some space for them to do a little thinking. I wasn't quite thinking of that yet. I was just sitting here going, here I am, a new teacher, or a cooperative school. The parents were in the room. They're my bosses. I'm thinking, here's where I get fired. And not only that the room was just totally silent, they were all watching me to see what was happening. But all I had was this tool, and I was stuck to it. I said, the bears are on the floor, and they belong on the table. And Sam bent down and picked up one bear and put it on the table. And Charlie picked up one bear and put it on the table. 498 to go. The bears are on the floor and they belong on the table. And then I remember to start narrating. Sam is picking up a bear and putting it on the table. Charlie is picking up a bear and putting it on the table. I'm going to help Charlie and Sam. And I did the scooping technique, right? Expedite things. I spit a whole bunch and put them on the table. The bears are on the floor and they belong on the table. Sam is picking up one bear and putting it on. They didn't like my idea. Charlie's picking it up, but then, hey, Alice is picking up a bear and putting it on. All right. The bears are on the floor, they belong on the table. Charlie's picking it up, Sam's picking it up, Alice is it, Jody's picking it up. Pretty soon we had like 8 kids who would come over because they wanted to be part of this story I was telling, this thing I was narrating, this community project. And it probably took us 25 minutes because they were still picking them up one at a time. But 25 minutes later, we had every one of those bears back on the table. And then Charlie and Sam knocked them all back on the floor. So I went right back to it. The bears are on the floor. They belong on the table. Sam and Charlie. By the time we were done the second time, there were probably a dozen kids involved in this project. Got it all back on the table. This time it only took about 15 minutes. And then sure enough, Charlie and Sam knocked them on the floor again. Started through the process again. By the time when it was done with it, we were done with that project, every kid in the classroom was engaged in the project of putting the bears back on the table. That's what we did for 45 minutes that day. But it was a self-selected activity, and all I did was make statements of fact and start telling the story of what I saw. And we created a reality around the community and who we are. I'm going to tell you one other one. Yeah, that adults. No, we all know actually. Normally, Charlie and Sam would have knocked the bears on the field and then run away. That's okay. If you start telling the story, Alice is still going to show up, and she's not going to, despite our thinking, she's not going to be resentful about it because you've not told her to help clean up. She's opting to clean up. So I just want to finish with one more story about tidying up that way.